Welcome to In the News for August 16, 2024. It's good to be back. I am Brett Burney from appsinlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. It is good to be back. We were off last week, Brett, and
Yes.
this week you've lost your voice a little bit because of all the speaking that you've been doing at a conference.
I've been at a conference, right? But it's good. I was not going to miss this. And so
That's
2
all
weeks
good.
ago, I got to tell you, at this conference, I had a couple of people come up and talk to me. 2 weeks ago, we recorded a special edition kind of a thing about all of the devices, the mobile devices, the PDAs that you and I used leading up to the iPhone, and that was fun. So I was thrilled to see today that apparently the PDA is not dead. And so thank you for showing the password vault from Sharper Image. Do you actually have one of these, Jeff?
Believe me, no. The funny story is,
Okay.
first of all, let me say that I loved that last episode that we have. If anybody hasn't listened to
That
it
was
yet,
so fun.
I loved it.
Yeah.
We had some good feedback from it, which was great. It really brought back memory lane of all the devices that I used to use in my law practice and earlier. In fact, I looked at the calendar yesterday, Brett. It was 30 years ago yesterday that I started working at my current law firm. And I've been here for 30 years now. So that's,
wow, congratulations.
time flies. Goodness gracious, 30 years.
That's
But
amazing.
back 30 years ago, when I was still using Palms and other things like that, I laughed because I got an email this morning from the Sharper Image. And of course, the Sharper Image of today is not the same as the old Sharper Image.
Nope.
The name has
Nope.
been sold to other companies and stuff.
Right.
But they try to do the same sort of thing of selling the same types of gadgets. And when I saw this device being sold as a password vault, I had to laugh. I mean, it has all of the aesthetic of a not great looking PDA from the 1990s, and I'm sure about
Incredible.
the same power. The idea is that you
Right.
pay $60 to put your name and password, which is something you could do for free on any iPhone or Android phone in an app. So why you would spend $60 for this little hardware device? I guess the target audience would be somebody for whom an iPhone is too complicated, and yet they're going to figure out this
Wow.
little device. I don't know. And I mean, of course, it's just the text. It's just a password that it's storing. So it's not keeping,
Yeah, there's no color.
two-factor authentication codes or anything else like that. But I have to laugh because this is truly the PDA of old that somebody has just sort of repackaged using the
Wow.
same technology. It must cost them like $1 to make or something very cheap, and they're selling it as a $60 password vault. So it made me laugh, and it made me think about the episode that we recorded that aired 2 weeks ago. So anyway, it's a nice little follow-up that you can still buy something of the same.
Jeff, it
ilk,
holds
so to
up
speak.
to 400 user IDs and
Oh
logins.
my
And I
goodness,
got to think,
400. That many?
I'm wondering,
Wow.
I may actually have more than that. I haven't
I'm
looked at my
sure
one
that I do
password in a
too,
long.
yeah.
I just now it's been so easy with one password that I just generate it real quick. Okay, but thank you for any of those longing for the days of yesteryear with the PDAs. The password vault is there for. It's on sale now. It was $69.99.
Oh, that's right.
You
It was
can now get it for the
$70
low
before,
price
yes.
of $59.49. There's a code called Endless, which
Yes.
doesn't really make sense on there. Well, speaking of new devices, I cannot tell you how thrilled I was this past week, my good friend, to see that you had a review of the Apple Watch Ultra 2. Now, I knew a little bit of inside baseball that you were going to try this out. This was a fantastic review, by the way. I thought you really did a great job of doing the pros and cons of all the things. And it really just started me to really understand some of the things I take for granted now. I've said this a couple of times on the podcast, Jeff, and you've called me on it because I would say, oh yeah, I just wear my Apple Watch overnight and I love to see, the sleep. And you're like, wait a minute, I can't wear my Apple Watch at night because I have to charge it. And it's just things like that kind of pointed this out. But this was a great review, and I am very anxious to hear a little bit more about what you think about your Apple Watch Ultra 2.
Yes. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for the buying advice. Now, remind me, you have the Ultra 1 or the Ultra 2?
I have the 1. I did not
Okay,
upgrade,
so-
so I'm holding out. I'm hoping, in these next month or two.
For all of our listeners, I texted Brett the sad news that my previous Apple Watch 7, which I had planned to replace this fall anyway, it just died, which was so sad. And I was like, well, I don't want to go 2 months without an Apple Watch, but I'm like, that's okay. Let me try something new because, Apple says you can return things after 2 weeks, which frankly is what I planned to do, to just try a couple things. But the first thing I wanted to do was try this Apple Watch Ultra. And of course, it's the Ultra 2 on sale now. You gave me some advice about bands and stuff like that. And I tried to write a really comprehensive review, not because I think that anybody should get necessarily an Ultra 2 today, but my guess is that either Apple won't update the Ultra this year because the Ultra 2 is still an amazing watch. I mean, it probably doesn't need to be updated, Or if they do update it in some slight tweak and come out with an Ultra 3, I'm expecting Apple to release new Apple Watches next month in September. So
Right.
if they do,
Agreed.
my guess is that the difference between the Ultra 2 and Ultra 3 will be, just a little minor things around the edges, so that this review
Right.
would still be helpful to somebody who's it's not the particular model, but is trying to decide, is the Ultra line, whether it's the 1, 2, or 3, is the
Right.
line of Apple Watch Ultra something worth considering? I will tell you, Brett, I like it more than I thought I would. So
Good.
the last time that you and I saw each other in person, you were wearing the
Yes.
Ultra on your wrist, and I looked at
Uh-huh.
it and I'm like, Brett, the thing is so huge. Like
Huge. I
it's
know. I know.
obnoxiously big. Okay, I
Yeah.
still think it's obnoxiously big. I really do, but I am getting more used to it. I
Okay.
thought it would be an issue with like a long sleeve shirt like being too big. No, it's
Yeah.
fine. That all works.
Okay, good,
And
good, good.
other things like that. I'm like, okay. I will tell you though that the bottom line from my review is what I expected to like. The larger screen, to my
Right.
surprise, was actually not that big of a deal, because it's actually not that
Right.
much larger of a
Right.
screen. I didn't realize
Right.
that it's a larger face. I mean, they build this as a 49 millimeter face, but that includes that black bezel. The 49 is measured top to bottom,
Exactly.
by the way. So when
Yeah.
it actually comes, what you're showing in the screen, and I showed in my review, in terms of the
It's
actual
good.
pixels, it's actually not much different. It is big, it's a
Right.
slightly bigger, but it's not much different. And there's only a few cases where you really notice it. You notice one more line of statistics when you're doing a workout, which again is fine, but I really don't look
Yeah.
at those statistics while
You
I'm working
mentioned
out,
that.
because I'm
Right.
usually on the treadmill and my arms are going back and forth. So I'll glance for a second, but it's just not a huge deal. Now, one thing I actually do like is the modular Ultra face, which has sort of become my
Yes.
go-to face. In fact, what is your
Yes.
go-to face?
Same.
Same
Same.
one, yeah.
It's so
It,
great.
it
Yeah.
it's a nice face. I like seeing the digital time. I like seeing
Yes.
all the complications around it. I wish that Apple would have something like the modular Ultra, because they could fit it into the available for the other watches. But they've
Right.
just decided
Right.
that they're going to make it exclusive to the Ultra, and maybe they do take advantage of those very few extra pixels for it. So I have to admit, for that reason alone, the more pixels are useful to me. But I sort of expected everything to feel bigger and more luxurious and more
Mm.
space, much like when we made the transition from the Apple Watch 6 and earlier to the 7, and it's not like that at all. So that was a little bit of a
Yeah.
disappointment to me. On the other
It,
hand,
yeah.
go ahead before I
Yeah.
change subjects.
I was just gonna say you did such a good job on there, and I have, now that I've had the Ultra 2 almost for 2 years, I guess now, it is it's a different shape, truly, right? The Ultra
Hmm.
2 is like a very flat top, and it's very bumpy, the ridge on there.
Yeah.
And it works out great for what it is. You addressed this a little bit, but I haven't had, I guess, a non-Ultra watch for a while. But
Hmm.
Apple has done a good job of kind of smoothing the edges a little bit, which means that they were able to spread that screen open a little bit. And now that I saw you write about this, I kind of got a little discouraged, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't like the flatness of this screen as much, to be honest
Hmm.
with you. I mean, I've gotten used to it, and I wouldn't go back right now. But I do like the idea that I wish that they would, go back and maybe, and we'll see what they do, and maybe it'll go back. And just one last thing on that
Hmm.
modular face, Jeff, I don't think that I saw you addressed it, but what do you think about the fact that in darkness it'll go red? Like, we've had an Apple Watch face that did that, but what was your impression about that?
I quickly turned it off. It's my
Oh,
impression.
you didn't like it?
I
Oh,
didn't
see,
like it, no,
I
because
think
you're right. It does do it automatically. And for the first
right,
day or two, I'm like, what in the world is this nonsense? I mean, I guess if I
right.
was outside, trying not to scare away deer or something like that, then maybe I would want this. But no, I want to see that beautiful full color, everything else
Oh yeah. Okay.
24/7. So
Okay.
for me,
Okay.
what I take it you like it. Why do you
At
prefer that
night,
red?
because when I'm in bed, and if I mean, the thing is, it goes into night mode for me. I have it, but
Yeah.
I just like it that at night I can quickly glance and see the time. Because without the brightness of it, right? You address the brightness of
Mm,
the face in this review as well, and
uh-huh.
I just kind of like that. Or if I'm in a darkened area, theater or something like that, right? It just isn't as as in
Yeah.
your face. And so anyway, I'm interested that you turned it off. You didn't like it because
Yeah.
there's only a couple of these modular faces that even offer that, on the Apple Watch
Hmm.
Ultra. So okay, good. So moving on. I like.
Well, I'll say one more thing
We'll
about
move
it.
on from the red face.
The modular Ultra Apple Watch is incredibly information dense. I mean, to the
Yes,
point
I
that
love it.
I will admit
Yeah.
it's almost obnoxious. Like if a person is just walking
Oh,
by me and
so
happens to
good.
glance down at my Apple Watch, they're going to say, "What kind
It's
of
like, what in the
gizmo is
world?
this with all the nonsense?" And it's to the point that if I'm actually going out, well, I will actually change my watch face from Modular
Oh,
Ultra to
interesting.
something that's more of a nicer watch face that's got hands, just so that if somebody looks at me, I
Oh
won't
my
look as
goodness.
quite as much of a dork. Again, only a slight
That's
change.
funny,
But
Jeff.
regardless,
That's
but in
great.
terms of pure usefulness and me, I love Modular Ultra. That when you put it in the red mode, as whatever that is,
Yeah. Yeah.
it everything sort of, to my eyes at least, blends together a little bit more. And
It does.
so I
Right,
find it a
right,
little bit
right.
harder to pick out the details. So there's
Oh,
actually a practical
absolutely.
reason
Yeah.
that I had it turned off as well. But thank you
Okay.
for mentioning that, because I didn't even mention that in my review because I turned it off so quickly I all but forgot about it. So anyway, so that's everything about the watch face. And then I'll transition, as you were saying, the literal shape of the Ultra. It
Yes.
really is a very different shape. And you know, that
Yeah.
flat face, I know it's all been designed to make it as rugged and durable as possible, so that if you
Right.
drop an Apple Watch Ultra, it's probably going to survive the drop much better than just about any other
Right.
model of Apple Watch,
Good
because
point.
of all those decisions. And you know, so bravo. I mean, that's good. Or drop it, or like I say, if you're climbing a
Or hit
mountain and
it
you hit
or
a
something.
rock or
Yeah.
something like that,
Right, right.
or for me,
Right.
you know, hit a wall, as I'm more likely to do than hit a rock. But so I appreciate that it's more durable. Don't get me wrong. And you know, all you need is one opportunity in which you've saved your Apple Watch instead of destroying the screen, and it's totally worth it for you.
Right.
So that's all
Yeah.
the views on that. The second thing though is, I mean, battery life. When you and I were texting about the watch,
Uh-huh.
you told me, Brett, you were right. You said the battery life's amazing, and oh my goodness, it is. I mean, as I'm almost speechless, because on paper it's just double the battery life, right? So we can all
Right.
understand that double
Right.
the battery life.
Yeah.
But it's not just double the battery life. It's the difference between never having to basically worry about battery life and
Yes.
battery life. You
Right.
know, I will go all night long, you know, and tons of power, no problem wearing it all night long. There's
Mm-hmm.
just ridiculous amount of power. The amount of time that I jump in the shower in the morning and get myself ready
Right.
is more than
That's
enough to
enough.
recharge it. And the
Yeah.
thing is,
Yeah.
that's not only is that more than enough to recharge it for the day, that's probably more than enough to recharge it for like 2 or 3 days. I mean,
Right.
it's so
Yeah.
if I was going camping and I had to skip my shower or something like that, it would still be lots of power. So it truly is freeing. I mean, all of us have gone through the days of, maybe not the current iPhones because they're really good now, but we all remember the days of
Right.
yore when your iPhone wouldn't have as much power and you'd have to be much more conscious of, you
Sure.
know, do I have a battery with me, or am I going to plug it
Right.
in?
Watch
You
it.
know, no,
Monitor. Yeah.
nobody likes monitor, or for your laptop computer too. Nobody likes having to be conscious
Right.
of battery life. And the Apple Watch was the one place, and frankly, that was one of the reasons I planned to upgrade my Series 7 this year, is I was having trouble getting to the end of the day, and it's annoying. I mean, it might be 10
Right.
o'clock, 10:30 at night. I'm still doing some work because I'm a night owl, and my watch is dead. It's like, come on, watch, couldn't you last just a
Right.
couple more hours? Whereas with the Ultra, oh my goodness.
Just a
So
little. Yeah.
this is the one thing that, even if you're not buying the
Good.
Ultra because you want to do scuba diving or mountain climbing or all those other crazy things, if you just want a really powerful Apple Watch, you know, if somebody tells me I don't need any other feature, but I'm getting it
Right.
just for the battery, I would say that's the smartest decision I've ever heard. Yeah, because the
Yeah.
battery life really is so much more. So
And
so I
I
mean
keep thinking here, Jeff, that
go ahead.
Apple has to pull that battery power into the non-ultra at some point, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just the fact, especially since they're gonna, I think you might, address this. They're going to go to watchOS 11, right? And they're going to focus on even more health capacity, which means that you need to have that watch on even more.
Hmm.
And I just feel like even the non-ultra watch, I'm hopeful. Is going to get a little bit of a boost in battery. Maybe not quite as much as the Ultra, because the Ultra just has so much room that they can fit in more battery, right? But I feel like Apple has to do something with battery.
Yes, in fact, one of the rumors is that, and this is just a rumor, I don't know if it's true, but next month when Apple comes out with the next Apple Watch, which I assume will be called the Apple Watch 10,
Right?
one of the rumors is that it might have a slightly bigger screen. So, like for example, maybe they'll match the
Mm,
slightly bigger screen of the Ultra and the Ultra 2. We'll see.
right?
But wouldn't it be nice? I mean, and I certainly don't think it's going to be much thicker like the Ultra, but maybe if they do something to, I mean, if there's space for a tiny bit more battery, or maybe if it's not more physical battery space, but they just do something with the efficiency of the operating system,
Right, right,
which is
right.
probably more likely. likely to squeeze a little bit more battery life. That would be certainly nice. So we shall see. So those are the big marquee things is, the display is larger, but it doesn't really mean the screen is much larger, although it is a little bit. The
A little
battery
bit.
life is insanely great. And
Yay.
then everything
Yeah.
else is just, some nice hams. I mean, for example, the brightness is not a huge thing to me, but the 3000 nits, I guess yours, quote unquote, only goes up to
Right.
2000 nits,
I only
but
have
mine goes up to
2,000.
3000 nits. And I tell you, Brett, when I was outside the other day, in
Yeah.
the New Orleans
You can
heat of
see it.
August, it is just horribly bright.
Yeah.
I was astounded. I'm like, how in the world is my watch face
Yeah.
so bright in the sunlight? Now, again, I don't do most of my life. I'm living, indoors in my house or indoors in my law
Fluorescent.
office as I am right
Right.
now, fluorescent lights. So it's not a big deal. But for those little edge opportunities, I'm like, wow, that's really cool. The double tap feature was also something new.
Yeah.
It's
I
nice.
didn't have
I
that.
I I wish I
Yeah.
could use it even more. It doesn't work on a lot of third-party apps yet, but I,
Okay.
I
Okay.
applaud it, and I'm sure that over the years, maybe it'll get to the point where we're using it a lot because it's nice to be able to just look at my watch and do a little tap with my
And
finger,
boom.
and
Yeah, I
boom, I've just
know.
brought up and I can tap again, and I'm going through the little control panel things.
Okay, that's
It's
cool.
nice that I could be doing something else with my right
Yeah.
hand and doing everything
Right.
with my left hand. So it's got
Right.
a lot
Right.
of cool extra features. I give the Ultra a thumbs up. The real question that I had coming into this watch is the Ultra just for outdoor adventure enthusiasts, or is there really something there for the rest of us?
Right.
And for me, definitely something there for the rest of us. There really is.
Okay, great.
Some things I don't like. I still think it's a little ugly with its chunky design. I don't like the fact that it's got a bigger black bezel that you can sort of see around pictures.
Yeah, I see this here.
Um,
You had another
you
picture
know,
here. It is
yeah, that's
gaudy,
another one.
that bezel now. Yeah.
You see more of that bezel, and you don't notice it all the time, but you notice it from time to time. The action button
Right.
is interesting. I feel like I haven't come up with like a great use for the action button yet. Right now,
Okay.
it's just my flashlight. But when I say
That's
just my
that's what I
flashlight,
do. Yeah.
I actually use the flashlight just about every
I,
day
I
because
know. I know.
all the lights on, I'm a night owl. The lights are off in my house. I don't want to turn the lights on and wake people up. And so I just turn it. And with that bright screen and with just simply one button press, it's actually pretty nice. So, you hate
Yeah.
to spend lots of money for an $800 flashlight, but it is useful to have. So I really do like it. I would love to see a little bit bigger screen and better life on other types of watches. I would
Yeah.
love to see the action button on other types of watches. I suppose I'll mention that the three bands that come with the Apple Watch
Right.
Ultra, they're really, I think that these are really focused on the outdoor adventurers. I mean, if you're going to be
Yes, of
scuba diving,
course.
you want the ocean band because it's made to go underwater. And if you're going to be truly in these rugged outdoor environments, I'm sure that's what the Alpine Loop is made for. I didn't like the buckle on the
Right.
Alpine Loop, so I ended up going with the Trail Loop, which is fine. It's a
Yes.
nice watch band. I haven't worn it much since I got the Apple Watch Ultra. I tried it for the first day or two.
I was gonna
It
say you have a
really
metal one on right now, don't
Yeah,
you?
that's
Is it a metal
right
band?
now
Okay, you
I'm just
okay. The
using, and I
Milanese.
was
Okay.
actually curious how the Milanese loop, which is a silver, would look
Right.
against the titanium of the Ultra.
Yes.
And you know what? It's fine. I mean,
It looks
they're
good. Okay. Okay.
slightly different types of silverish, grayish, but they're totally fine. And all of the other bands that I had been using with my Series 7, like for example, my solo loops, which I really enjoy using when I'm not at work,
Right.
perfect. Everything's great. So,
Okay. Another, yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead. What's
I
it?
just want to ask one other question. Did you get a cellular enabled version? And did you have a chance to try that versus your 7 at all? Like any
I
phone calls or things like that?
I have tried it a little bit with phone calls just to see how it worked. In fact, I was trying
Right?
it not so much for the cellular function, but because the microphone and speaker are better
Yes.
on the Ultra than
Right.
the Series 7. Um, the short phone calls that I had with my son just to try it out, partially try it out, and also because I actually got to call him for something. They were all fine. I mean, without doing a
Okay.
side by side, I'm sure if I did a side by
Yeah.
side, I would have said, "Oh wow, this sounds better." And from his standpoint, perhaps my own voice sounded better. But I didn't do just from memory alone. Calls were fine with my old Apple Watch and
Okay. Okay.
fine with the Ultra. Maybe they're a little bit better. I just didn't even notice it. Um, but I did like it. And again, I also like cellular because it means that even though I really do have my iPhone with me
Oh
at all
yeah.
times, just if for
Yeah.
some reason it's not with me, I'm just outside and I don't want to have it with me. I like the idea that I'm connected all the time. And this gets to something about the speedier chip. And again, this is not
Uh-huh.
unique to the Ultra. This is
Right.
also true for the Apple Watch Series 9 and will be true for the 10. But as Apple makes these chips faster and faster, it really does make the watch more responsive to the point where I
Exactly.
can
Yep.
check my email and it just works. Whereas older Apple Watches, you go to check your email and you wait and it's loading and you wonder if it's working. And, whereas with this one, things just are nice and speedy and it's nice to know, yeah, this
Hmm.
works. So, really overall, a nice big thumbs up to the Ultra line. Again, at the end of the day, I'm planning to return this at the end of the 2 weeks.
How many days
I'm,
you got
I'm,
left before you?
this weekend, basically this weekend. So I'm going to
Okay.
return it. I'm going to go to a Series 9 and I'm going to see what I think. And the big
Oh, you
difference
have
is,
to
of course,
review
is going
that
to be the
too.
battery life. So
Yeah.
we'll take a look at that. And my plan is to basically, get to the point where Apple releases the new watches in September. And at that point, I'll either decide, what, my Series 9 or maybe I'll go back to the Ultra are fine, and I really don't need to get the
Mm.
latest greatest thing. Or if Apple has some cool feature in September that I really want, then maybe I'll make that jump too. So I'm in sort of this exploratory mode right now, which I did not
I
plan to
like
be
it.
in, but it was sort of a nice. If
It's
there's a nice
fun.
side effect of losing your Apple Watch, it's this. I guess
That's it.
I lost my stand streak, Brett. I had like many, many, many years of
What?
standing every single. You
Oh,
get the
come
12
on.
circles, but
Yeah.
because my Apple Watch broke while I was at the beach, and I was without
Oh
it for a day,
no.
my stand streak is now back to 10 days or
Okay.
whatever it is. So
Apple owes you for that one.
yeah,
That's
which
unfortunate.
in the new WatchOS 11, you'll actually be able to
Right?
adjust that, right? Because you can give
Yeah.
yourself a day off from your
Give it a
circles.
rest day. Oh,
But
that's so
since rest
fun.
day doesn't exist, yeah, well, that's I will not lose my desire to stand just because my my streak is broken.
All right. Well,
That's the Apple
thank you
Watch.
for indulging us in the Apple Watch Ultra 2. I guess I've just taken it for granted. I know I'm going to upgrade with whatever, if it's the Ultra 3 or something else. It's become such an integrated part of my life and doing everything, which is just great. Let's
But
talk
Brett,
about another device. Yeah.
it sounds like,
Yes.
however, you're in that ultra lifestyle, and it would take a lot for
Just
you to
a
go
little
from the
bit.
ultra down to something else. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Just a little bit, but I agree with you on the things that you're saying. I mean, when I first got it, I was just like, "Oh my goodness, this is so clunky." But for me right now, it's a no-brainer just for everything you just said. The battery life, the screen brightness, all those kind of things. Which is good. Well, okay, let's talk about the Vision Pro quickly and go through this. This was an excellent little article from Dan Moren at Six Colors that I know you've talked about, and really what he focused on here was, he got a kind of like a preview of visionOS 2, but he was talking about the spatial photos, which I am so excited to hear a little bit more about, Jeff.
Yeah, very cool stuff. Dan Moren doesn't have a Vision Pro. He
Oh,
just
Jason
doesn't.
Snell has one, right? Yeah,
Right.
Dan
Jason
Moren.
Snell has
Yeah.
one, not Dan, but he got invited to go to Apple's campus in New York City to try out the headset for about an hour, but specifically with the goal of trying out the new version of Vision OS 2. Because right now we're still using Vision OS 1, except that if you have the developer preview, much like for the iPhone and stuff, you can have the beta version of the next upcoming OS. The same is true for the Vision
Right.
Pro. And so, in fact, now that I'm thinking about this, the last time that you and I recorded this podcast, I still had not made the jump. But I was on another podcast a few weeks ago called iPad Pros, and the host
Yeah, that was
of
great.
that podcast, Tim, he's like, Jeff, you should really consider the developer beta because it doesn't break anything. It's totally fine. And
Yeah.
so I took his
Yeah.
advice and I did
Oh,
install
good.
the developer beta on my Vision Pro. And there's a couple of things around the edges that are a tiny bit broken, but nothing that takes away from my enjoyment of the device. And
Okay.
it allowed me to get an early look at some of the new features, one of which is the new versions of Photos, and related to that is this new
Ooh.
spatial photos thing. And it really was surprising to me and really delightful that, the number one feature of the Vision Pro remains those immersive videos. They are absolutely fantastic. But
Right.
now, thanks to Vision OS 2, there is a new number two thing in terms of what makes it really special, and it's these spatial photos. And I think the thing that makes spatial photos special is, unlike the videos that Apple makes, where they're choosing the subject matter, whether we're looking at elephants or whether we're watching people do parkour or whether we're in balloons or whatever. I mean, all fascinating experiences, and it's amazing to see them in what seems so lifelike as if you were there. But when it comes to spatial photos, these are your photos, right? I mean, these
Your
are the
photos.
pictures
Right.
of your
Your family.
friends and your family, and that already have some emotional or sentimental appeal or bring back memories and everything else.
Right.
And when you take a picture, which on its own, I mean, I look at an old pic, I look at like a wedding picture, for example, of, oh, that
Right.
just brings back so many happy memories from that day. But I've seen those pictures a million times in my life. So you would think that, how could I possibly do anything to a
What
picture that I have just literally looked at thousands of times and make it different. But when you click one button and Apple turns it into the spatial photo, what it does is it's smart enough to look at the photo and find features of the photo that it thinks are more in the forefront and features of the photo that are more in the
Oh,
background, all using artificial intelligence. So it's just
yeah,
trying its best to
yeah.
guess. So far, however, I have yet to see it mess up. It seems like statistically, sooner or later, it's going to have to guess
It's
wrong,
good.
right? Won't Doesn't it
Right.
just seem logical to you? And yet so far it
Right.
hasn't. It has correctly pushed them. And what it will do is it will take, like, for example, if there's a face with a background like you and I both are right now. I mean, behind the scenes, what it does is it basically takes a cutout of me and it
Yeah.
makes it just a little bit larger. And so since it makes me just ever so slightly larger, it can take the thing over my left shoulder and the
Oh,
thing over my right shoulder so that it sort of adds that depth so that when you're looking at it, it changes it into something that you really think
interesting.
is 3D. And so it part of me feels like, I understand what they're doing. It seems like it should just be a party trick, no big deal. It's look at that. But the reality of it is, it really makes the picture feel like immersive. Like,
Yeah.
and what does that mean? And to my brain, it makes me feel like I'm there again. I mean, not
Yeah.
100%. It's not quite as much as a spatial video where you really feel like you're there, but it's enough so that I found that the emotional impact of it in
Yeah.
just making the picture more alive, whether I'm looking at weddings or pictures of my kids when they were young and they were cute, and or friends that or people that have passed away or whatever it is,
Right.
it's something special. And again, these are just words that I'm saying out loud. And when I was on that podcast with Tim, he told me the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I hear what you're saying. It's something special. But then you actually experience it yourself and you're like, wow, like this,
Yeah.
Apple has something here. So when Apple figured this out in their labs, they must have been pretty happy that whether it was by design or just by dumb luck, they happened across something that really is cool. And one of the things I like about it is you can take your own photos and you can just any photo and you can
That's
click one
right.
button
Right.
and make it spatial. But they also have a feature in the new Photos app where they will say, here are some featured spatial photos. They will go through your library and they're probably picking the ones that they think are going to come out really good just because they can
Sure.
tell they've got depth in them. But they'll say, here's a photo, much like right now, you open up your photos and it's going to show you some picture from years ago that you forgot about. And it's like, oh, that's a cool photo. But now it's the same idea. Here's a photo I've forgotten about and it's a cool photo, but it's in 3D. And then you're looking at it in the spatial version of it. And it's, not only does it just bring back the memories of the content of the photo, but because of the feel of the spatial aspect of it,
Yeah.
it's really something special. And so that's something totally cool. Now, because it's a
Yeah.
developer beta, this just shows the developer world. When I first tried the feature, it was working. And then I tried it a couple nights ago and it was still showing me selected pictures for spatial, but
Right.
they actually weren't in spatial. I then had to open the picture and
Oh,
then click the button. And I don't know what that is. I'm
and
sure
move it.
Apple's
Okay.
this is just an example of little things that Apple will get fixed. But when it comes out
Yeah.
in
Right.
whenever it comes out, the next weeks, months, whenever it comes out, I'm sure they're going to have that all nailed down, and it's going to be a really cool feature. So I love the idea that they're coming up with something that's so cool for visionOS 2. I mean, it really makes me think of, is
Yes.
there something else really cool in the wings that I don't even know about that's going to come out in visionOS 3 or 4? I mean, and it just goes to show, because again, I always feel like I have to say with the Vision Pro, I know it's too expensive. How can you justify spending $4,000 on
Right.
this crazy thing? It's so expensive and it's too big and it's obnoxious that you have to have a battery connected by a cord. Yes, I understand all of that stuff, but it's going to get better in the future, much like today's
Absolutely.
iPhone and today's Apple Watch are so far beyond
Right.
in the past. And when it gets there, Apple is playing around with all these things now that when we have less expensive, more less expensive and lighter devices in the future that can still use all of this stuff, spatial video, spatial photos, then it's going to be at the point where, like, wow, like everybody's going to want to get these things. So that's what's really
Yeah.
fun, to watch this stuff be developed in real time.
Both you and Dan, I think, said something similar in the fact that, this is good that you're talking about it, and I appreciate that you're explaining it, but I don't think that people can understand the impact. I can't even. I don't have it yet. But it's
Mm-hmm.
just like you said, when, the fact, I mean, this is going to so much emotions that Apple sometimes is so good at doing, is
Yeah,
letting
yeah.
you make a spatial photo out of some special photo that's only going to be special to you and your family. And they're allowing you to do that. I mean, that's kind of unheard of. I mean, just the fact that they're going to be able to allow you to do that. And I think that's good. And the other thing quickly, I just thought last week we were up on vacation in Maine, and I took a picture of a fish that I think either I had caught or my son had caught. And I'm bringing this up because when I pulled the picture up, Jeff, and you've seen this, and probably some people have seen this, it was a beautiful way that the fish was framed in this picture. But all of a sudden, there was like a white glow that would just go around the fish. And what that allows you to do is that's Apple Photos showing you that you can tap and hold on that fish, and I could have moved it. I could have basically take that fish out of the picture. And when you were explaining how the spatial,
without its background.
Exactly, without the background. And so when you were explaining that, like how the spatial photos are done kind of in real time, this isn't like brand new. You and I have talked about this. Like Apple has been training on this, for so long. And I love that you have that capability now. I just have the iPhone, so I can't really make something spatial out of it. But I just love the fact that I can pull that out, and seeing what the iPhone can do now tells me how much better it's going to be when I do get a Vision Pro.
Isn't it funny, Brett? Because you raise a good point. When you and I first saw that feature, and I forget if it came out 1 year ago or 2 years ago, you and I were thinking, oh, you can make a sticker with like the subject in your photos. But in the labs, the people at Apple are thinking, yes, you could do a sticker, but wait till you see what we've got planned in the future. It just sort of shows like, you have this technology and this technology, and Apple puts it all together. And it makes, again, it's one of these things that it makes you wonder, what do I have today? What are the 2 or 3 things that I'm looking at right now that I'm not yet seeing how they fit together to create something way beyond that Apple's going to show us a year or 2 from now? That there's something out there. I just don't know what it is. So,
well, we talked about batteries for the Apple Watch. Let's talk about batteries for the iPhone. We can just do this real quick because we love the Wirecutter. They always do such a great job. And most everybody at this point has some kind of a portable power bank or charger. But when I saw that you linked to this today, Jeff, the one thing that I loved, because I've always tried to ask, why don't more people kind of focus on this? Most battery banks that I see are just the bank, and you have to then have a cable to plug into the Apple power bank or the power bank, and then plug into your phone. And I'm like, I don't want to carry both the power bank and the cord. So I have always looked for something which it looks like Wirecutter is right in line with what I'm looking at. The Belkin Boost Charge, not only is it a flat power bank, but I love that the cables are built in. They have a lightning cable and they have a USB-C cable. And I love this. That's why I wanted to talk about this today. I don't have the Belkin one. I had one that I bought a long time ago from a company called Rory, a third party, but it also had an Apple Watch. But I love this. I carry it around all the time because it has those cables built in. And so I just like the fact that you linked to this today.
Yeah, that is cool. I mean, most of the batteries, in fact, I literally have one on my desk right here just because it has my law firm logo on it, the logos and everything. But it's a traditional power. In fact, this one's nice because on the flip side, you can actually do Qi charging. But like you say, on the end, it's got just the ports, the USB and USB 3. So I have to then go out and find a cord.
Find a
cable. It's awkward to go from the cord, from the cable to this and that. Having something built in. Yeah, when I read that was the one thing that jumped out at me at this Wirecutter review is the next time that I buy a battery. And I always think about it this time of year, because living down here in the South, we're about to have hurricane season. And, we've gotten to the point where my battery on my iPhone, and especially with the Ultra I have right now, a lot of my batteries are good enough that I'm not needing to plug in as much as I used to, except for like extreme circumstances like a hurricane or a power outage or something. And that's when you're looking for all of your battery chargers. And being able to pick up a single device that has everything you need right there, including a built-in cord, that makes a ton of sense to me. And the next time that I buy one, I'm going to follow your advice.
You're going to do it,
advice, and I'm going to get something like this that's got it built in. And this Belkin product looks pretty good. $70, a little bit more expensive, but Belkin quality is good. The one that you were showing that you bought was much less cheap. What was it? $23. And how big is that one?
Right.
But that's half the power.
It's not very big.
5,000 milliamps as opposed to 10,000. So you get half as much charge.
It's much lower. Right.
Much, much cheaper. So, you just have to make your decision on that.
Yeah, I love this because, again, today we've talked about this. I'm pretty much, I think, all the way on to USB-C now, except I still do have the MagSafe charger for the back of my iPhone, Jeff, which, they don't even make anymore, but it's still Lightning. And so, again, I love this because once you have a battery pack, just like we all do, inevitably today, I think more than ever before, it's just so frustrating because do you need USB-C to USB-C? Do you need USB-C to Lightning? Do you need USB-A to Lightning? Or C? And it's just so frustrating. That's why I love having this. So thanks for posting that today. I'm glad that works out good. Well, Apple continues to support Major League Soccer. Ted Lasso. But when I saw this story, that was the first thing that I thought of. I mean, they still show MLS games, right? So this is an interesting story. Massive iPhone array will replace English Premier League's awful video referee tech. It's almost like replay technology, but apparently they're going to have like hundreds of iPhones around the pitch, around the field, and that's a little odd. But hey, maybe an automated referee will be a little bit better than a human referee. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, the technology. I mean, it makes sense that we always talk about how the iPhone camera is so amazing, especially for, you can have good depth, and like mine's got the 5x optical zoom on it. You
Right.
got HDR and high frame rate and everything else. And so I guess they figured that if you have a whole bunch of iPhones looking all around the field, that is going to produce a more reliable. Yeah, it's unclear to me if the
Ooh.
iPhones are going to actually call the offsides, or an official watching the iPhones, where there'll be still a human
Right.
involved. But
Right.
it's pretty funny to me that they, when they're replacing the prior technology that they were using with video cameras, that they decided, what, the best and most effective way to do this is to use just a bunch of iPhones.
A
That's
bunch
pretty
of
funny to me.
iPhones.
That is pretty funny. I look
Yeah.
forward to seeing this in practice. And again, because of, I didn't really think about, soccer in Europe until Ted Lasso. It's funny that,
Right.
Ted Lasso is over, and yet Apple is still having an impact on what's going on the pitch.
Right.
So very funny.
I find it so fascinating. It's not just cameras. Like it's full iPhones. Like the
Yeah.
iPhone can do so much. So it's not just using the camera. They're obviously utilizing the internal processing power of the iPhones to like collaborate all
Hmm.
together. Anything. Anyway, just really interesting stuff. We have reported on some stories in the past about Apple maybe trying to pull some manufacturing out of China, not
Right.
being so reliant on China. And I think we've known this has been going on, even to where some manufacturers will have tried to be in the United States, but we know that Apple has manufacturing plants in other places. But boy, Heidi, I did not know that they had invested this much in India. India says Apple is the fastest growing firm in the country over the last 50 years. This is William
Yeah.
Gallagher and Appleinsider. Just amazing how much that they're already doing in India, which I think
Yeah.
is a good thing.
Yeah, the headline alone is astounding, that, of all the companies that would be growing in India over the last half century, Apple is the number one, is pretty, pretty interesting.
Right.
Now, I know that part of it was India is one of those countries, and I don't know all the details on this, but years ago they had adopted some laws that in order to sell things like a smartphone, you had to make a certain percentage of it in the country. So like it was
Right.
a little bit of a protectionist law that they had enacted.
Okay.
But I guess Apple decided to play ball and to comply with it. And, as a result, they're now doing a ton of manufacturing in India, which I think is good for the company and frankly good for us users, because like you said, Brett, it means that they're not 100%
Yes.
tied to a single place like
Reliant.
China.
Right.
What should happen
Right.
if we get into some, if what happens if China were to invade some place, much like Russia has invaded Ukraine, and as a result, tariffs went up, and everything else, that you couldn't get stuff from China. Now that would have a huge impact on the economy in a million different ways, but iPhones would be one of them. So it's always good to diversify. No question, it's good to
Yeah.
diversify. So part of it is for diversification. Another part of it is just for in-country sales. But people apparently in India are buying iPhones, and they're doing
Amazing.
well. They're making them there. They're selling them there. So it's a big country. I've always known in my periphery, like I've always had a sense that India was an up and coming country for Apple,
Right.
but I did not
Right.
understand how much
That
before seeing
this
this
much.
article.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. It's good stuff. On your new Apple Watch Ultra 2 that you may or may not return. um, hopefully you've put on the animations from Toy Story 5 coming out. I thought this was really cute. Pixar has reused an Apple Watch face to make the new Toy Story 5 trailer. This is just pretty amazing.
This is hilarious to me. I mean, if you look at the little trailer that they have, it's all the characters, jumping into view, and you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a cute little animation. And then you realize every single one of those animations, with like one exception, all they did was take the exact same animation that's been on
That's
the watch for
crazy,
years, and they
right?
just literally like copy the animation, paste it into this YouTube video, and it's done. It's like a summer intern created this in an hour. I mean, I'm joking. Who knows? Maybe it was more than an hour. But based
Right.
upon assets that had been created years ago for the Apple Watch, and presto chango, now you have a trailer for a movie that won't even come out for 2 more years. It's
Right.
pretty funny, pretty funny.
Now,
I mean, I
Jeff, I
guess
know
that
that
means
you
that
and
the
I,
movie is so
yeah,
much in development that they don't have any frames of it to show yet. I don't even know.
I
My
don't
goodness.
know. Now, Jeff, I know you and I have kids that are not of the age of Toy Story fame anymore, but
Not
I'm going to
anymore.
guess your kids probably watched, you remember the original Toy Story. And I don't know if you've had a chance to like see some of the footage from the original Toy Story. Anytime I've gone back and looked at it, it looks so horrendous in my mind
Compared to
as like
today's
so
technology, yeah.
primitive compared to today. But it was just so weird because every time I see it, I remember how much of an impact that movie had on all of us, you know, being one of the best animated movies. But now when you look at it compared to what you can do today, it's just like, are you serious? This is what we dealt with? Anyway, it's still good.
Yeah,
Speaking
Toy
of things
Story
to
I'm seeing.
watch, yeah,
I was just gonna say Toy
yeah,
Story came out in 95, so that was really early in the days. Um,
95.
but I do remember Toy Story 3, which came out in 2010. That
Yes,
was what, 14 years
yes.
ago. That was the one that when my kids were of the age of
Oh,
watching
that's
movies,
what, okay.
that was a big one, was Toy Story 3. And I'm sure if you do a side-by-side comparison, so who knows, when Toy Story 5 comes out in 2 years, maybe it will be, incredibly realistic. We shall see.
Here's some other things to watch. You link to The Instigators movie starring Matt Damon and Casey Affleck, not Ben,
Mhm.
right? That's
Ben's
his brother,
brother.
I'm
That's
assuming.
his brother, yeah.
Yeah. This looks good. And then I just got a notification on my iPhone just the other day that finally the Bad Monkey series with Vince Vaughn is apparently available. I was actually texting my wife this morning once I read your stories here, Jeff. I'm like, hey, I've got 2 more shows for us to watch when we can get on the couch again together. And I'm looking forward to it. Good stuff coming out.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the reviews of Bad Monkey yet, but hopefully it's good because that looks like it's got a lot of promise.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
only is Vince Vaughn funny, but of course it's done by what's his name? Bill Lawrence, the guy who did Ted Lasso, which we were just
That
talking
Ted
about,
Lasso,
and who
right?
also did
Right.
Scrubs and many other successful shows. So at least it's got the ingredients that it could be a good show. The one that you mentioned a second ago, The Instigators, it was a fun little
Yeah.
comedy, like a heist. I mean,
Oh,
it
you
was
watched it already, right?
Oh, I
Yeah.
watched it. Yeah, no, I was looking for something to watch last weekend on my Apple Vision Pro. Not that it's 3D or anything like that. But I made the movie really big, like I was in a movie theater. And It was a fun little, popcorn movie type thing. You just have fun watching it. I totally enjoyed it. It was silly and it was fun.
Nice.
But the stuff coming out this fall, I mean, there's some
Oh,
great,
my
great stuff. I
goodness.
mean, Slow Horses
Slow
season 4.
horses.
You and I
Oh,
both love Slow
yeah.
Horses. That's gotten so many
Yes.
great reviews. I cannot wait to season 4. Wolves, which
Wolves.
I think we talked
Yeah.
about that recently with George
We
Clooney and
did.
Brad Pitt,
Yeah.
because Apple decided to really they're going to have a very limited theatrical release and then go straight to the TV for that. Um, the Shrinking Eye, like Silo. Silo is the big. Did you get into
Yes.
Silo yet? Yeah,
I
such a great
did. I watched
sci-fi
them all.
show.
Yeah.
We've
I
talked about
like
this in the
it.
past that when it comes to, if you enjoy sci-fi, Apple TV Plus is just hitting it out of the park. And Silo
Uh-huh.
is one of their many good shows. I really look forward to season 2. I know it's based upon a book, so it's the books are supposed to get
Yeah.
good reviews. So I'm
That's
sure
right.
they've got
That's
some good
right.
source material. Hopefully that means that season 2 will. In fact, if I remember, I don't want to give any spoilers, but there was something that happened at the end of season 1 that literally opened the door to a whole bunch of other stuff.
Literally.
And
Oh, yeah.
so
I remember.
I look
I hated
forward
the
to seeing.
cliffhanger.
Exactly. It was
I'm
definitely a
ready.
cliffhanger. So I look forward to finding out what that's going to mean for season 2. That one starts up November 15th, so we still have a little bit more to wait for that one. But and
Gotcha.
then some new shows coming out too. So Apple's got some great stuff on the plate. And I mean, it's funny because it used to be, we say this all the time, HBO used to be the one that, like, every Sunday night there would be something on HBO. And there was for me
Yeah.
recently. I was watching
Yeah.
House of the Dragon, which I totally loved. House of the Dragon. I thought that their most recent season was fantastic. And I watched the last episode a week or two ago. And then I'm like, what's next? And I don't know what's next on HBO, but Apple TV
Right.
Plus has got me covered with good stuff coming out every week.
In addition to all of those things coming out in a couple of weeks, everybody knows that the Olympics, the traditional Olympics, is over. But in a couple of weeks, the Paralympics are going to be in Paris. And I got to tell you, this little video you linked to called The Relay, I watched the entire thing. And first of all, it was so inspirational. And second of all, I'm like,
Absolutely.
I have no excuse to ever get out and like go walking or running or some kind of an exercise because it's just a great little video. Thanks for linking to that today.
Yeah, it reminds you that anybody can get out there as long as you try.
Yeah,
Quote unquote, limitations, whether you're missing a limb or something else, you can still get out there and compete. So it's fun.
incredible.
And it's fun to see the use of the Apple technology in the video. It
Yeah,
is, and yet it
that was
doesn't come
amazing.
across as too much of a, patting themselves in the back. I mean, you really get the sense that these are
Just a little
true
bit, but it's still good
athletes
though.
that are competing. There's a little bit of that for sure. But yeah, it's a short little video. I think it's worth watching. It was good.
Even I'll tell you one of the things that stuck out at me. One of the athletes, I don't think for his that he couldn't see quite as well. I think
Exactly.
that was what he was dealing with. But when he got up, he checked his Apple Watch to see how much sleep time, or he was looking at the Apple phone as well, which is
Mhm.
again something that I do every morning now. My wife and I both do this every morning. She has to charge her watch a little bit extra. She doesn't have the Ultra yet, but it's like we compare that because it is good to kind of have that information, which I just think is really good. Good stuff there. In the know.
In the
Speaking
know.
of Apple Watch, here's something that just surprised me. I have known for a long time that the Apple Watch, any Apple Watch, it doesn't have to be the Ultra, it can be any Apple Watch. Apple, a long time ago, allowed you to wear it on your left wrist, which I guess is sort of traditional. That's where I've always
Mhm.
worn mine.
Me
Or
too.
you can wear it on your right. But the Apple Watch allows you to change the orientation so that you can decide, you can say left wrist or right wrist so that, everything looks the way that it's supposed to look with you. Now, I don't know how long ago that they allowed this, but not only can you change the watch orientation from left to right wrist, you can also change the orientation of the digital crown button.
That's right.
Now, Jeff, I had always just considered this as like, well, okay, that's only for righties, lefties, right? It's like that's the only time you have to worry about it. Well, earlier this week, my daughter actually does some weightlifting, and she apparently had always been so frustrated that she wears her watch on her left wrist, but when you are lifting weights, sometimes your wrist goes all the way back. And what would happen is that it would hit the digital crown on
Sure.
her Apple Watch. And that would either stop the music or stop the workout or so. And so she texted our family chat earlier this week and she's like, guys, I just learned that you can change the orientation of the digital crown. And in fact, she was so happy that my wife does some of the same. They'll go to the gym together and the weight lift. And they were both like giggly, like, this is so great. So they still wear it on their left wrist. It's just that they turn it around. So I typically would think that you would have to, reorientate your watch band as well. But that way, the digital crown is now not in the upper right corner of what most of the time people would be. The digital crown for them is now in the bottom, I guess, left corner there. And they even love the fact that they're using their thumb now with the digital crown as opposed to their finger. And again, I had known that this was here. I just never thought to tell them about it because it's like, well, you wear your watch on your left wrist. You don't need to change the orientation. But I thought this was great. And then also, I'm glad that they did it because when I do like weed whacking or yard work, I will typically wear gloves, right? And the glove sits right up underneath my Apple Watch on my left wrist, Jeff, and it does the same thing. And every once in a while that I'm doing something, it'll hit it. And I'm like, this is brilliant. You can either do this in the Apple Watch app on your iPhone, or you can even do it on the Apple Watch itself. You just go into the settings on the Apple Watch, you go to general and then orientation. And you'll see at the top, it says wrist orientation. And then at the bottom, it says digital crown orientation. So I wanted people to know that that's available there. And they make it so easy. In fact, there's even a cool little animation. It doesn't flip. It like spins it around. You can see it. And then, it's so easy to change your watch band or switch your watch band if you need to on that. That it's like, hey, I'm going to start using this a little bit more because there are times when I do accidentally hit that digital crown button and now I can just switch it over to the other side really easy.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I don't remember how long it's been since Apple offered it. I don't think it was in the very first generation, but it's been a long time because I have been
Yeah.
talking to people about their use of an Apple Watch for a long time, just because I'm a geek and people come up to me and tend to talk about their technology. And I have
Right.
encountered, not a lot, but for years now, I have absolutely encountered a select group of people who flip it, just like you described. And
Yeah.
the
Right.
two reasons that they tell me, you just mentioned them. One of them is because of whatever they do with their arm, they happen to hit the
Yeah.
digital watch. I
Right.
could definitely see weightlifting doing that. And the other one is I've heard people saying even independent of that, that they like the idea of using their like for me, if it's on my left wrist, of using my right hand and my thumb from my
Right.
right hand
Right.
to
The
scroll the digital.
thumb.
They just prefer using the thumb. And I guess if you just get used to that and that's what you just enjoy doing, why not? I mean, it's great that you get to choose, which works better for you and which you like better. So I agree that that's a nice feature. And then you sort of mentioned, I never even thought about, doing it just on an occasional basis, like just because I'm going to be wearing gloves or something like
Right.
that. That's something to think
Yeah.
about that I hadn't even thought about. So yeah, good tip. I like that
Yeah.
tip.
Good.
My tip also has to do with the Apple Watch, and it is related to the
Oh,
fact that I've been
good.
using the Ultra, which is talking about
Yes.
sleep. And then in a couple
Yes.
of weeks, when we have the new OS, the vitals. So I had, because it had been so long since I had used the sleep mode with my Apple Watch, I had to sort of remind myself of how it works. And there's two ways to use an Apple Watch when you sleep, and have it monitor it.
Okay.
One way is there's an app called the Sleep app, which you can go to the Sleep app and you can say, I go to bed every night at, 11 o'clock or midnight, whatever, and I wake up at such and
Right.
such a time. And that'll
Right.
help you with your watches, and it'll give you warnings like it's almost time to go to bed and stuff like that. And that
Right.
works well if you have a pretty regular schedule. I probably should have a regular schedule. It's probably better for your health if you do. I don't. I'm pretty haphazard. And so for me, instead of using the Sleep app directly, I was using the sort of the manual mode. And the
Okay.
way that works is it's part of the focus modes. I don't really use focus modes very often on my watch or my phone, but
Right.
if I'm looking at the Apple Watch, and if I press the side button to go into the focus modes, I can see the little moon icon. And if I tap on
Mm-hmm.
the moon icon, one of the choices that it will give me is sleep. And so
Right.
once you turn that on, then your watch is in a sleep mode, which means that I'm saying now it's time to go to sleep. So it's starting to count at that point. While I'm sleeping, if I look at my Apple Watch, the screen will remain black. It will not turn on, even though I have a watch
Right.
that otherwise would be on all the time, so that it doesn't distract you or whoever you're sleeping with. But if you want to see what time it is or anything, you just tap the screen, and what you end up seeing is a display that's very much like the night's, what is that mode when you put your Apple Watch next to your bed, and
Or like
it's
a standby. Yeah.
nightstand
Nightstand.
mode,
Right. Right.
nightstand mode.
Right.
So it just basically shows you the time and stuff like that. And so that's what you have throughout the night. And then when it's time to wake up in the morning, this one, you actually have to do like a little trick. First you have to hold down the digital crown, and you'll watch a little
Right.
timer. You have to hold it down for like a couple of seconds.
That's right.
And
That's
then you
right.
need to press the side button to go to the control center, and then you turn off sleep. So it's a couple of steps. I actually don't think that's a bad thing, because it makes sure that you're awake enough to actually do a couple steps to ensure that you're not going, by the time you go through those steps, you are
Right.
awake. You're not going to fall back asleep
Right.
again. So if you manually turn it off, so that's how you get into the sleep mode. So then the next question becomes, okay, so I'm going through the trouble of doing this. Why? Why am I using the sleep mode? And
Yes.
this is the thing that got me. This was the stopping point that I hit years ago when I last tried this. I last tried it with one of my earlier Apple Watches. I would charge it before I went to bed. I would use the sleep mode. And then over time, I would look at the statistics, which you can look at to a certain degree on your watch, but certainly on the phone. And it will say, your average sleep over the last week has been this and this many hours. And it'll show where you think you had the REM sleep, and, all sorts of statistics. But it's really just a bunch of numbers. And the
Yeah.
problem that I had with the sleep function in the past is, I'm like, what do I do with these numbers? I mean, I guess if
Right.
I could try to draw some connections, but I just didn't see a ton of value of it. Now, this is what Apple is going to address in just a few
Yes.
weeks in watchOS 11, where they have this new feature called Vitals. And
Mm-hmm.
what the Vitals feature does is it takes that same information, and one of the things it does is it actually gives you some context for it. So, for example, it knows that your average heart rate was such and such, and it will then go to the next step and say, hey, by the way, this is above average, or this is below average, or this is something to think about. And it will help you draw connections between different things that you were doing during the day, maybe different medications you're taking, different, things that you're eating. But it's my understanding is the Vitals app, it's one of the many things it's going to do is put some context into the sleep
Yes.
information, so that you actually know what to do with it, and how it might affect your day. So I look forward to trying that. And so that's why, whatever
Absolutely.
watch I end up with, later this year, whether it's an ultra or not,
Right.
you'll want to probably get back into the mode of using sleep mode. I will tell you that even independent from all of the sleep mode stuff, I actually really like having a watch on when I sleep at night because I like the
Mm-hmm.
fact that if I happen to
Yeah.
wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or something like that, that you can, it's just nice to sort of look down and you can see the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes, I mean, this is probably not the healthiest thing to do, but I might even want to jump in my email or just see what's there. I don't know, but it's nice
Right.
just being able to do all that. And I know that my iPhone is right there on my bedstand, but by the time I take it off and open it up and look, it's waking me
Yeah.
up too much.
Too
I
bright and
really,
everything. Right.
yeah, I really
Right.
like the watch. Plus, as I mentioned in the past, I love waking up with the Apple Watch because it can wake you up through tapping as opposed to some
I love
noises.
that.
So
Yeah.
I really
It's
do
like,
like
hey.
sleeping. Yeah, hey. I really do like sleeping with the watch. Even though the sleep mode is of limited usefulness now, it's going to get better with
Okay.
Vitals, one hopes. And
Yeah.
certainly if you have an Apple Watch Ultra and you've got the space for it. So it's so this might be the time that even if you have used and then discarded the sleep mode in the past, maybe with the
Yeah.
upcoming Vitals feature, this is the time to use it again. So I had to sort of remind myself of how it all works.
Now, Jeff, do you go into the health app on your phone and track anything or look around at anything there to get some numbers from your Apple Watch? That's typically how I do that. Like
Mhm.
everything that you've talked about, I do that. But I just wonder if any of that makes more sense. But we can talk about that next time, maybe on some
Yeah,
of
no, I
that.
mean,
But
I'm looking at it
that's
now. I mean, it tells,
yeah,
I mean, it tells me my average sleep and, your heart rate range from such and such to such and such, but it doesn't really, I mean, right now it's saying that my heart rate range from 40 to 69 beats per minute. Is that good? Is that bad?
yeah,
Am I alive? Am
right,
I dead? I don't
right.
know. And likewise, it tells me
Gotcha.
that
Okay,
here's how my breathing ranged while I was sleeping. Well, those are
right.
interesting numbers I'm looking at. Are they good numbers? Are they bad numbers? I have no idea.
Okay,
So
well said. Yeah,
that
that's
that's
right.
that's
That's
my
right.
that's my problem with it.
You're right. I sometimes I go in here and I think Apple does an excellent job in the health app of explaining some of this, but there's been a couple of times that I've had to go like as deep as I possibly can to really understand what it is that they're looking at. But you're right. I think this Vitals app, I know both of us are excited about the Vitals app. And it sounds again, to me, this is no surprise at all. This is exactly where Apple is going, sort of in just providing more information about the health. And I mean, really just having the information is just so amazing. I think I shared this with you a couple weeks ago. I was getting ready to go into the, for a procedure at the hospital, and I had my pre-anesthesia call, and she's like, "Do you wear an Apple Watch?" I'm like, "Why are you asking that?" She's like, "Well, I would like to know your average health, your average heart rate." I'm like, "Really?" Like, because we were doing it over a Zoom call, right? I didn't go in, and I'm like, "That's how you're tracking it?" Like, I just think that that's so great, and it's just going to continue to get better. I just love that. Well, Jeff, thank you, man. This was so fun. I knew this was going to be fun getting back after a little bit. And I know we'll have more to talk about next week. We'll see if you still have the Apple Watch Ultra 2 or not.
We'll
Everybody,
see.
stay tuned. We'll talk with you next week, Jeff.
Thanks, Brett. Bye bye, everybody.